In conversation with John F. Andrews. John Andrews began writing fiction in 2012. His novels of the Great War leverage his fascination with history along with his knowledge and experience as a physician and a Marine Corps father. The latter has given him an intimate understanding of what it is like to be a service family member. The series include An American Nurse in Paris, Dogs Don't Cry, and Our Desperate Hour, with three more novels on the way. Andrews was born in Chicago and raised and worked in Wisconsin and Minnesota. After earning a BA in psychology, he completed medical school at the University of Minnesota. He trained in internal medicine at Beaumont Hospital in Royal Oak, Michigan, and then completed a pulmonary medicine fellowship at the University of Chicago. He earned board certification in internal, pulmonary, critical care, and sleep medicine. After a successful practice in Grey Bay, Wisconsin, he and his wife, Sue, retired to Manhattan, Montana. He became involved in the fire service and worked as an EMF firefighter and medical officer. John and Sue then moved to Arvada, Colorado, where they enjoy family and the magnificent Rocky Mountains. And on today's episode of Auto Interview, it's my utmost pleasure, joy, and excitement to have on the show today John F. Andrews. Welcome on the show, John.
Well, thank you for having me, Peter.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have you on the show today. I'm sorry about the internet glitches we had initially. I'm excited we're back again here to have a conversation around your beautiful titles. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, you're welcome. Happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, John, I would like to say that I am impressed by your bodies of amazing literature works, and I would like us to start today's conversation with one of your books titled Our Desperate Hour, Novels of the Great War, whose description page on Amazon actually reads quite compellingly, amazingly, quite pulling and interesting for me. And I would like to start with the obvious question that most authors get asked. What inspired you to write this book?
My sons. My oldest son joined the United States Marine Corps in 2003, and his younger brother joined in 2005.
Yeah.
Their involvement in the Marines led to a deep dive on my part into Marine Corps history and lore after I realized how little I knew about what they were joining. That then led me to World War I and the Marine Corps
Wow.
involvement with the war. So that was the initial inspiration.
That's quite amazing to know, really. It's amazing to know about your sons, being the source of inspiration with this, moving on and creating on. That's quite beautiful to know. Thanks for sharing. I'm not quite sure if you have a
Yeah,
copy of the book there that you would like to show to the camera. I know you have some behind you there, but then if
yep,
you can have
right.
one, yeah, beautiful cover. Would you like to talk about the making of the cover? I can see a man standing in there with a soldier wear.
Yeah. The cover was created in combination with More Visual Limited in Leicester, England. So
Yeah.
I give them a lot of credit and a shout out for this. On the cover, we see a soldier who is standing next to a motorcycle. The lead character in the book is a 46-year-old U.S. Army Reserve officer who had joined for patriotic reasons,
Yeah.
but basically becomes disabused of much of his original reasoning. He used a motorcycle to get around on the battlefield, and this
Mm.
is inspired by a real character, a
Oh.
doctor, Richard Derby, who barreled around this particular battlefield in a motorcycle sidecar. Ab is searching for his son, who's a Marine officer, to try to reconcile after a break that had occurred before the war. So the cover is from More Visual. The back cover includes a picture that I took at the roadside in Bella
Yeah.
Wood. So this is what the roadsides looked like at the time of the battle, with a combination of poppies and daisies.
Wow, that's quite amazing to know, really. I love your take on that. To me, it sounds very great and quite pulling. And you also have another book in the name of An American Nurse in Paris. I would like to pause and say that your title names are quite compelling and I love them all. Now, for the sake of readers who haven't read An American Nurse in Paris yet, Without giving much information away, could you give us a sneak peek of what we should expect when picking the book up?
So this is the book, also created by More Visual. And
Hmm.
again, the back cover with my photo. An American Nurse in Paris originally was a part of the Desperate Hour,
Yeah.
but the book overall became too long. Uh,
Mm.
Basically, medical journalist Alice Simmons has one last chance to stay in France, and indeed one last chance to stay alive. This is a
Mm.
story of courage, humility, determination, compassion, and hope during the last year of World War I.
Wow.
Alice trained herself to be a medical journalist, and her original goal was to report on the war, primarily the medical aspects of the war.
Mm.
When she arrives in France, she realizes that she has to scale two walls that are impossible to scale for a woman in that era. One
Mm.
was women, and the second was the bias of the American journalist corps, if you will, against women as well. The idea of a woman seriously reporting on the war was actively upsetting to a number of American journalists who were on scene in Europe at that time.
Wow.
So part of this is her struggle against those barriers, and part of it is finding her own way as a nurse and overcoming not only the obvious obstacles, but also internal obstacles.
Wow. Oh, that's quite amazing, really. I love the sound of an American nurse in Paris. It sounds to be quite compelling to me. Just show the cover to the camera so we see again what it looks like. Oh wow, that's quite amazing. I love the look of that cover. It's very great. Was this self-published or it was traditional publishing?
This is independently published.
Oh, wow. That cover is
On the
beautiful on
cover,
me.
one thing you'll note is that the background photo is a vintage photo from 1918. The foreground is our imagining of what she may have looked like in the book.
Wow, that's quite compelling. That's well thoughtful of you. Thank you. Thank you. Now, I want us to talk about feedbacks because someone like me, I'm always surprised how, readers would interpret a book differently, in different ways based on their opinion. And you want to agree with me that one of the things that makes literature, in terms of be it novel writing or poetry or stage play, etc., comedy, to be quite interesting is the fact that it can be interpreted in different ways by different readers based on their opinions. And sometimes the readers might get the message intended by the author, sometimes it might be close to getting the message, sometimes it might be far. But then, as far as writing is concerned, I wanted to ask you, how do you feel when readers interpret your works differently than you intended? How does that make you feel? I'm curious.
Well, it makes me feel really good. Uh, I think every author puts uh, a story together in a way that I didn't compare to weaving a tapestry.
Wow.
That, when I toured a number of places in Europe that were tapestry rich, I was impressed
Mm,
by not only the beauty and the intricacy and the work that went into the tapestries, but also the stories. You could walk around a room and see a story. Often they were biblical or lauding some king, and I don't really care
yeah.
for kings very much, to be honest. But to me, writing a novel is like weaving a tapestry, and I'm weaving little elements in very intentionally in the hope of readers finding them. So my novels can be read superficially just as a great story, but some readers are going to find those threads that I weave into the tapestry of the story.
Yeah.
And those are deliberate ones. When somebody finds something that I didn't intend, uh, maybe it was self-consciously intended or not. But I'm
Wow.
delighted that people find things that even I didn't think of in a story.
That's great. I love your take on that because I think it's actually a very nice thing. Sometimes it can be very interesting. How some people are like, oh, really? He had this part, and I was like, oh, maybe like, really? I never intended that, but that's great. Thank you for spotting that up. It's always amazing, and we all understand that readers tend to interpret their works based on how it fits into their understanding and based on how the story could relate with them. And sometimes it differs. And that's one of the reasons why book conversations I'm think can be very fun. The way we'd have people sit there and talk about a particular book, and the first person review differ from the second person review, the third, and on and on and on and on. We have people interpreting works the same different ways. And that's why sometimes you can even have some bestseller like that of J.K. Rowling's books. You have some people give it a 5 star, and some readers give it 1 star because they all have their own understanding of all of these things works.
Yeah, no, that's really true. And I know for myself, there are famous works that I will not name that I would give 1 star to, things that won major awards, and I was bored by,
Wow.
and other books that won nothing that fascinated me. So I think each reader's experience is unique to them, and it is a fascinating question of how that reader's life experiences combine with those of the author
Hmm.
in the creation of the relationship between the author and the reader and the book.
Hmm. That's great. That's amazing. I love your take on that. And you also have Dog Don't Cry. Dog Don't Cry, which is also a part of the novels of the Great War series. And I need to say that you've done quite a lot, really, with our book series. Novels of the Great War. That's quite amazing. Now, without giving spoilers, could you tell us a bit about the making of Dogs Don't Cry as well? And how did you even come up with that title name? Because that's quite impressive and quite uncommon as well.
Well, the name just sort of struck me. Here's the book.
Mm,
The name just sort of struck me, and I'm not sure that it's the best title because, in a way, it sort of sounds a little depressing, and it's really not a depressing book. Um, the inspiration was really two things. And to give you a
mm.
notion about it, it's a dog
Yeah.
novel wrapped inside a coming of age story
Oh,
about two orphaned French teenage refugees fleeing the tidal wave of World War I as it begins to engulf the village where they live. Um, Two inspirations. One is border collies. My wife and I rescued an older border collie and had her join our household a few years ago. And I fell in love with border collies at that point.
mm,
They are a fascinating breed of dog that uh, I think looks at the world rather differently than a lot of other dogs, personally. I may be getting a little anthropomorphic there, admittedly. The second inspiration was Garth Stein's novel, The Art of Racing in the Rain, which is my all-time favorite dog book.
mm.
When I read that, I thought, it would really be fun to write a book
Yeah.
with a dog's point of view in it. And as a challenge as an author, one of the things that every author can challenge themselves with is writing a character that is outside of their knowledge, outside of their reckoning, outside of their world in a
Mm,
way. So, what does a border collie think? So I had spent the time that we had with Abby learning her ways, learning her behavior, observing her behavior in response to things. And as I wrote the book, I asked myself, well, how would Abby think about this, or what would she do? And so that's really the inspiration and the process of creating Dogs Don't Cry.
mm.
The notion behind that novel and the others is to give readers what I would term a 180-degree view of the Battle of Belleau Wood, just one point in time, 1 month in time,
Yeah.
basically, in World War One, looking at it from the military side in our desperate hour,
Yeah.
but with a medical and a paternal angle to it,
Mm,
looking at it through the lens of the eyes of a father, a Marine father, and a
wow.
doctor. An American nurse in Paris is looking at the aftermath of the battle, the effect of the battle on those who fought it, were wounded, and evacuated to hospital, as
Wow.
well as the challenge that women had dealing with the environment in 1918.
Wow.
And then Dogs Don't Cry, looking at it really from the civilian standpoint. So 180 degrees, military, medical, civilian. I don't attempt to do anything about the German point of view. I don't read German
Wow.
and I don't have access to German sources. So I just looked at the American side and the French side of this.
I love your take on that. I mean, I've been enjoying your answers to this question, and to me, they sound quite compelling, quite interesting, and it's quite detailed into most of your writing. And I really love your take on that. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah,
Thank you
you're
so much.
welcome.
Now, for somebody like you who have written multiple novels, I mean, I wanted to ask you, how exactly were you able to gather inspirations and ideas to craft these words from sentences stage to paragraph stage to pages stage to novel stage, and not just only having one novel, you've had two, three, etc. I wanted to ask you, how do you get the inspirations and ideas to write these books? I'm curious.
Well, the original inspiration came out of genealogic research. I
Yeah,
ran into several stories about relatives of mine, several of whom I knew who were alive at the time I was young,
yeah.
um, that were just compelling and fascinating and totally unexpected.
Mm,
And the details of that is unimportant. Let's just say unexpected findings, things that I didn't know. And as I researched
mm.
those things long after everybody involved was dead, there were
Wow.
huge gaps in the narrative. I wrote things up as a nonfiction type of story, but
Wow.
realized that fiction was a great avenue to fill in the gaps. And that's really what got me interested in historical fiction.
Mm,
Uh, we know history, but history always has gaps. History is written by the victor.
mm,
History is written by people with biases, and sometimes those biases create gaps in the historical record.
mm,
A novelist can fill those, and as long as we don't get too fantastical about it,
mm.
sometimes the way we fill those is with things that are very compelling and believable. So that was the original inspiration. Um, I think what I wanted to do also was to bring stories about forgotten heroes, unsung heroes,
Mm.
and heroes like the children of France,
Oh, wow.
who to an American audience are unknown. And I really wanted to bring these sorts of stories to readers.
It's amazing, really. I love your take on this. To me, it sounds quite pulling, quite amazing, quite great, and I really love your take on that. And just apart from the books we've mentioned so far, do you have any other works you've authored or say currently working on?
Yes. I've written a total of 9 novels in various levels of completion.
Wow.
These first 3 are the only 3 that are published so far. I just finished the third revision on a follow-up on Dogs Don't Cry, which is
Wow.
called A Dog's Gift. This picks up where Dogs Don't Cry left off and follows the same characters through the end of the war up to Christmas Day.
Mm.
Um, it's the same point of view characters in a different set of circumstances, shall we say.
Yeah.
I'm currently working on Desperate Moments, which is a
Yeah.
follow-up to both Desperate Hour and An American Nurse in Paris.
Oh,
This
wow.
novel focuses on Nurse Alice Simmons as she goes through the rest of the war through a variety of, again, trying and challenging circumstances, not the least of which being the 1918 flu epidemic. I had debated writing about the epidemic during COVID years because people were pretty tired of reading about pandemics during the height of COVID. But I think it's a good time to put some of that into perspective by looking back at 1918. And then Hiram's Run is the third of the coming novels, which is all complete and ready to publish. But I didn't want to publish it until I published the other 2. Then I have 3 other novels that are set in the 1930s that follow some of the same characters 18 years after the war.
That's something great, really. That's something amazing. That's something quite beautiful. And I love your take on this, really. Your books are quite evocative as well. Very evocative.
Thank you.
You've selected the uncommon of genres and written a novel about it.
Yep. It's been my privilege to be able to write these. I love it.
Thank you so much. I wanted to ask you, of all the books you've written so far, do you have a particular favorite from them? And also, do you have a particular favorite character in all of your series? Something I'd love to hear your take on.
Um, I really don't. The thing is that
Ah,
I love all my characters,
oh,
each for
okay.
different reasons. None of them are autobiographical, even
Oh,
though there's a Marine father involved and doctors involved. None of them are autobiographical.
mm,
Um, no, I love the stories of each one of these characters. They each bring parts of humanity, including Abby, the dog,
mm,
who also brings out many dog-like characteristics.
wow.
But I wouldn't say that I have a favorite. No.
Well, I love your take on that because I think it's more like a tempting question to ask authors. Of the books you've written, which one is your favorite? Then asking them which one is your favorite character of the characters you've created. That's beautiful to know. Thank you for sharing. Before we wrap up, I love your take on this. I like you. If you have any advice for upcoming writers, those who are struggling with writing and publishing, what advice would that be? And also, where can interested viewers get a copy of any of your books from?
Well, my recommendation to authors
Yeah,
is patience and
patience,
persistence. Uh,
persistence.
Never give up and believe in yourself.
Mm,
If you love writing, do what you love. Write.
mm,
Uh, if your next meal depends on it, you better do a lot of marketing. If your next meal
mm.
does not depend on your writing,
Complete.
then just do it for the joy and pleasure. But for writers, it's a very, very, very difficult marketplace. It's
Mm,
extremely crowded. And I know I'm using
yeah,
some adjectives there, but hundreds of thousands of books are published every year. To get yours to stand out is very difficult.
very difficult.
Um, in my world of independent publishing, it
Yeah.
is said that about 90% of independently published novels never sell more than 100 copies in their lifetime. So I think one of the things to realize in publishing independently is to know that there's a huge wall to climb
Mm,
to become known and to become read and to find readers. It's not easy, and I'm not going to go into all the details because we don't have a few hours here to go into them.
yeah.
Uh, but patience and persistence, belief in yourself,
Mm.
and never let writing become a burden. Let it be a joy.
Wow. Just amazing advice you've got. Patience. Never let writing become a burden. Let it be a joy. Just because that's one of the reasons, that's one of the ways you find the joy of doing it, not just doing it because you have to do it forcefully. It's a beautiful one you've got in there. That's an amazing advice, and I'm hoping that viewers, even including myself, would love to utilize it. So thank you so much, John, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Literature. And also, this is more than awesome, very great, and quite exciting. And just for the sake of viewers who are watching, I would love to get a copy of John's books. I left a link in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of his titles directly on Amazon, on Barnes& and Nobles, on his website, and also on other platforms. I also left link to John's social media pages for possible followings. So thank you so much, John, for accepting the invitation. This is very great and very wholesome. I totally enjoyed the conversation, and it is more than awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me, Peter.
Yeah, it's my pleasure as well.